how long will your money actually last? Most people have absolutely no idea, and the ones who think they do, they're usually the most wrong. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to figure out your number the day your money runs out. Because the math is simpler than you think, but the variables, they're going to surprise you. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll be able to calculate this for yourself in about 60 seconds. And one thing I'm going to share around the middle of this video has added literally decades to people's retirement runway when they finally understood it. Here's the uncomfortable reality that nobody likes to say out loud. There is a number out there that represents the day your money runs out. For some of you watching this, that number is closer than you think. For others, you might actually have more than you need and you don't even realize it. Either way, you need to know your number. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you the exact tools to find it. Let's start with step 1. What do you actually have? So, first things first, how much money do you actually have? I know that sounds obvious, but trust me, most people cannot answer this question with any real accuracy. And if you can't answer it, nothing else in this video will work for you. You need to count everything. Your savings accounts, your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, any property equity you could access, all of it. Write that number down. That is your starting point. We're going to call it your portfolio. Everything else we calculate flows from this single number. Now, here's where people make their first big mistake, and this one quietly costs people years of financial security. They look at that portfolio number and they think it's static, like it just sits there and you pull from it. But money invested doesn't sit still, it grows. And that growth is the thing that can completely change how long your money lasts. Even a modest return of 5 or 6% per year can extend the life of your savings by decades, not years, decades. So, understanding the difference between money stuffed in a savings account earning next to nothing versus money intelligently invested, it's night and day. And we'll come back to why this matters even more once we factor in inflation, which I promise is going to shock some of you. Moving on to step 2, the other side of the equation that wrecks most financial plans, your spending. This is where most retirement conversations fall apart because people either wildly underestimate what they spend or they have no idea at all. Take your monthly expenses and be honest. Housing, food, transport, healthcare, subscriptions, entertainment, gifts, travel, all of it. Add it up. Multiply it by 12. That is your annual spending. Now look at that number, because this is the number that is slowly eating your portfolio every single year. The relationship between how much you have and how much you spend is the core equation of your entire financial life. Let's discuss the concept that changes everything. I promised I would change the way you think about this forever. Pay attention to this part. This is the single most useful idea in personal finance. It's called your withdrawal rate. Specifically, what percentage of your total portfolio are you pulling out each year to live on? This percentage is everything. Financial researchers have studied this obsessively, and one of the most important findings to come out of decades of research is something called the 4% rule. Here's how it works. If you withdraw 4% of your portfolio in your first year of retirement, then adjust that amount slightly for inflation each year going forward, historically, your money survived 30 years in the majority of scenarios tested. Not all of them, but most of them, even across market crashes, recessions, and brutal economic periods. Examples always help, so let's make it real. Numbers on a screen don't hit until you see them applied, so here's a real scenario to contemplate.
Say you have $1 million saved. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 per year. So if you can live on $40,000 a year, which in many parts of the world is entirely reasonable, that portfolio historically has a strong chance of lasting 30 years. Now, if you need $60,000 a year, you're withdrawing 6%. And suddenly, the math gets much more stressful, because at that rate, you're drawing down your portfolio faster than it can reasonably grow in average market conditions, and the risk of running out of money increases substantially. But, and this is critical, there's a huge catch with the 4% rule that almost nobody talks about. Now for the catch nobody mentions. Here's the thing about the 4% rule that people miss. It was designed around a 30-year retirement. If you're retiring at 65, that probably gets you to 95. Solid. But if you're retiring at 50 or even 45 because you've been smart and aggressive with your savings, 30 years isn't enough. You could easily live another 40 or 50 years. So for an early retiree, many financial planners now suggest thinking in terms of 3% or even 3.5% to build in that extra buffer. That tiny 1% difference, it's the difference between dying with money in the bank and running out at 78. Surprise, there is a silent destroyer. Now we have to talk about inflation, because this is the silent destroyer of financial plans, and it's the variable that catches the most people off guard. Every year that goes by, your money buys a little less. Historically, inflation has averaged somewhere around 2 to 3% annually in most developed economies, though we've all seen recently how fast that can change. Here's what this means in practice. If you need $40,000 to live on today, in 20 years you might need somewhere between $65,000 and $75,000 to maintain the exact same lifestyle. Same groceries, same heating bill, same everything. Your withdrawals need to grow over time just to keep pace. This is exactly why having your money invested in assets that also grow over time is so critical. Cash savings alone, they will almost certainly lose purchasing power over a long retirement, period. Learn to use the 60-second calculation. All right, this is the part I promised at the start. The simple way to estimate how long your money will last, no finance degree required. Take your total savings, divide it by your annual spending. That gives you a rough number of years assuming zero investment return. So if you have $500,000 saved and you spend $25,000 a year, that's 20 years of runway before you hit zero, assuming the money doesn't grow at all. Now in reality, invested money does grow, so the actual number will likely be higher, but this gives you a floor, the worst-case scenario with no growth whatsoever. If that floor terrifies you, keep watching because the next number is even more useful. What is your FI number? No idea? For a more realistic picture, there's a tool called the FI number, Financial Independence Number. Here's how you calculate it. Take your annual spending and multiply it by 25. That's the rough portfolio size you'd need to theoretically sustain your spending indefinitely using the 4% rule. Spend $40,000 a year, you need a portfolio of about $1 million. Spend $60,000, $1.5 million. This number is brutal in its simplicity. It tells you exactly whether you're there yet or how far away you are. And once you have it written down, everything else in your financial life starts to organize itself around hitting that number. There is a risk nobody warns you about, and it doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and it's destroyed more retirements than almost anything else. It's called sequence of returns risk. The idea is this: the order in which your investment returns happen matters enormously, not just the average return, the order.
If you retire and the market immediately crashes in your first 2 or 3 years and you're withdrawing money at the same time, you're selling assets at low prices to fund your living expenses. Your portfolio takes damage that it may never fully recover from, even if the market eventually bounces back. This is why many financial advisors recommend keeping 1 to 3 years of living expenses in cash or low-risk assets when you retire, so you can weather early market downturns without being forced to sell investments at a loss. If you retire right before a crash with zero cash buffer, you could be in serious trouble before you've even unpacked from your retirement party. There is a game changer: guaranteed income. Now let's talk about Social Security or government pensions if that applies to you, because this completely changes the equation in a way most people underestimate. If you're in a country with a state pension or you qualify for Social Security, that income covers a portion of your annual spending, which means you need to withdraw less from your portfolio. And less withdrawal means your portfolio lasts dramatically longer. Here's a quick example. If your annual spending is $50,000 and you receive $18,000 from Social Security, you only need to pull $32,000 from your portfolio instead of $50,000. That difference in withdrawal rate can add 10, 15, even 20 years to how long your money lasts. This is also why delaying Social Security if you can afford to, even by a few years, can make a massive difference to your long-term financial security. Next up is the healthcare wildcard. Now here's the variable that wrecks more financial plans than anything else: healthcare. As you age, healthcare costs tend to rise, sometimes dramatically. This is especially true in countries without universal healthcare.
I've seen people retire with a perfectly calibrated financial plan, only to find that unexpected medical expenses destroy their projections within a decade. Building a healthcare buffer into your planning or making sure you have adequate coverage is genuinely one of the most important things you can do to protect your financial longevity. Don't skip this part, seriously. Have you ever heard of the myth of shrinking expenses? Let me share something that doesn't show up in most financial planning calculators, and it surprises almost everybody. It's called lifestyle creep after retirement. Most people assume their spending will drop when they retire. No more work clothes, no more commuting, and yes, some expenses do fall, but here's what the research actually shows. Newly retired people often spend more in the early years, not less. Travel, hobbies, family support, home renovation, the freedom of retirement combined with a lifetime of deferred dreams leads to surprisingly high spending in those first 10 years. Planning for a spending curve that starts higher and gradually decreases as you age is often more realistic than assuming flat expenses throughout retirement. If your plan assumes you'll suddenly spend less the day you retire, you probably need to redo it. Here is the framework you can use today. All right, here's where I bring all of this together. This is the framework I want you to use today, not tomorrow, today. Grab a pen. Step 1. Add up everything you have. Every account, every investable asset. Step 2, calculate your actual annual spending, not what you think you spend, what you really spend. Step 3, subtract any guaranteed income you'll receive like Social Security or a pension from that annual spending. What's left is the gap your portfolio needs to cover each year. Step 4, divide your total portfolio by that gap. That tells you how many years you have at zero growth. Step 5, if that number is lower than 30, you need to either increase your portfolio, decrease your spending, or find additional income sources. Step 6, aim to get your annual gap to no more than 4% of your total portfolio for a 30-year retirement, or 3% for anything longer. 6 steps. That's it. That's the whole thing.
The real point of this video isn't to make you panic. The goal is to give you clarity. Because here's what I know from watching people navigate this. Uncertainty is always more stressful than knowing the truth. Even if the numbers aren't where you want them to be, knowing where you stand gives you time to make decisions. Cut spending, work a few more years, downsize housing, pick up part-time income in early retirement. There are always levers you can pull, but only when you know what the problem actually is. And honestly, the flip side is also true. Some of you watching this are going to do the math and realize you're in a much stronger position than you thought. You've been anxious for years, but the numbers actually work. That's not uncommon either. People are often more financially secure than their anxiety tells them. One final thing before you go, and this might be the most important point in the video. These calculations assume a passive approach. You set a withdrawal rate and you just pull money out each year like clockwork. But the most successful retirees, they're not passive. They're dynamic. They reduce spending in bad market years, maybe picking up a small freelance project or pausing on big travel plans. They spend a little more freely in strong market years. This kind of flexible adaptation can make a significant difference to how long your portfolio survives, because the real world is never quite as neat as any spreadsheet. The question of how long your money will last doesn't have a single universal answer. It depends on your specific numbers, your investment returns, your spending habits, your health, your lifestyle, and 100 other variables. But what you now have are the tools to actually calculate it for yourself. Run your own numbers today, not tomorrow, today. Because the earlier you understand your situation, the more time and options you have to shape the outcome. Your financial future isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you can actually plan for, and it starts with asking exactly the question you asked today.